Hey class, today we're going to talk about impeachment. Impeachment is a process by which the uh, Congress votes to remove or votes to first charge and then ultimately remove um, a public official of any of the branches of government for specific actions or inactions taken while they serve in their public function. We're going to go through the constitutional principles involved, and then we're going to look at how it's been applied and talk about some of the distinctions between different kinds of public officials. So, the constitutional basis of impeachment is that it, again, is this formal accusation of a public official for crimes or serious misconduct, and it's the means of removing the person from office based on that crime or misconduct. So there's two things going on here. There's two bases for the impeachment. First, in Article 1, it lays out the process by which the House and then the Senate acts. And then Article 2 lays out the grounds for impeachment. And Article 3 does talk a little bit about some of the elements of impeachment. So we'll get to each one in turn. In the House of Representatives, it's generally the Judiciary Committee that investigates and, if they find cause, draws up articles of impeachment. Now, it could be any House congressional committee that could draw up articles of impeachment. Traditionally, though, it's the judiciary that does the heavy lifting. I suppose, and again, the speaker could also, I suppose, designate a special committee to investigate. But because special committees don't have legislative authority, they probably pass it off to the Judiciary Committee for the drafting, or there might be a couple different committees working together. It's kind of up to the speaker in any given case as to how they're going to proceed with an impeachment inquiry. Now, you'll recall that the House of Representatives is the chamber of majority power. So that's all you need in an impeachment. If a majority of the House of Representatives votes to impeach, again, that's 218 members when everybody's present, because there's 435 total House members, you can impeach an office holder. So back in the day, the Clinton impeachment, President Clinton was impeached on perjury charge, 228 to 206, and obstruction of justice, 221 to 212. Those are the two articles of impeachment that passed. Donald Trump was impeached on a single article and by a majority of the House. So it's a simple majority to impeach someone, a public official, in the House. Then the action shifts to the Senate. The U.S. Senate is where people call it a trial, but it's not really a trial because it's not a judicial proceeding. The hearing to determine whether or not the Senate will vote to remove the person from office takes place in the Senate, where the senators act as the jury, quote unquote. Now, the House members, who usually members of the Judiciary Committee, act as managers of the impeachment. What that means basically is that they function as in the role that a prosecutor would function in a criminal case. They make their argument to the Senate body, standing as the quote jury, or at least the determiner of fact, why this person ought to be removed from office. And an impeached official can have their own legal defense counsel present. they are not denied legal counsel or anything. If the person being impeached is the president, then the Chief Justice of the U.S. Supreme Court sits as the judge, who essentially makes sure that the proceeding is fair. Okay, it is the Senate, the political body of the Senate, who make the determination of removal or not. But again, the U.S. Supreme Court Chief Justice will stand in as the arbiter, the referee, so to speak, to keep the proceeding fair. If it is somebody other than the President of the United States being impeached, then the President of the Senate, in other words, the Vice President of the United States, will preside over an impeachment. And it only takes 2/3 majority, or 67 votes, to convict and remove somebody from office. I say only kind of sarcastically because that's a really high bar to achieve. Okay, 2/3 of the Senate agreeing suggests that there is a great consensus in the body that this person really needs to be removed from office. Now, I want to remind everybody watching this video about a very simple and crucial thing about impeachments, all of them. They are political, not legal or judicial proceedings. They are being impeachment is brought by a political body, the House of Representatives, which votes to either impeach or not impeach someone. They vote, majority rule. And then the Senate, a political body, hears the discussion and then votes, and they need a 2/3 majority to remove somebody from office. This is a political process. There is no requirement for due process. There is no standard, clear and convincing evidence, beyond a reasonable doubt, preponderance of the evidence. There's no legal standard that the House managers have to meet in order to have somebody removed from office. It's politics. It's a vote by a political group. Something really important to remember, because when you view impeachment testimony or view an impeachment process or proceeding, a lot of the commentators get bogged down in legalese, talking about all the witnesses and all this kind of thing, and it sounds like you're talking about a trial. Just remember, it's not a legal proceeding. It is a political process. Okay. So what charges can be brought? Well, Article 2, Section 4 of the Constitution cites treason, bribery, or other high crimes and misdemeanors as the charges that can be brought against a public official for removal. We'll talk about each one of those in turn here in a sec. Treason is defined in Article 3, Section 3 of the Constitution, and it is defined very specifically. Okay, treason against the United States shall consist only in levying war against them, or in adhering to their enemies, giving them aid and comfort. No person shall be convicted of treason unless on the testimony of 2 witnesses to the same overt act, or on confession in open court. So, you got a couple things going on in that statement. Treason has to happen during wartime. You got to be at war. And, considering that the last time we had a declared state of war was World War II, begs the question as to whether or not somebody could be charged with treason under some definition other than that constitutional one. We have other laws, statutes, that, espionage and that kind of thing. And there's a very real question as to whether or not a public official could be impeached solely on treason if it doesn't meet that definition that's laid out in the Constitution. Now, granted, if a public official is potentially selling secrets to a foreign enemy, or something like that, or using their office to support activities against the interests of the American people, they're going to be charged not with treason, but with some other high crime or misdemeanor, possibly bribery. Let's talk about that for a second. Bribery is the act of giving money or a gift that causes someone to alter their behavior. And we talked a little bit about the distinction, for example, between bribery and legitimate legal campaign finance operations a couple of units ago. In the governmental context, giving someone money or some other inducement to exercise that public official's power in a way they might not have otherwise acted but for the money or other inducement probably is going to get you in trouble under a bribery charge. And that, of course, is the basis of removal for under the charge of bribery. Now, hey, it's also a felony to do this. And so, whether somebody is impeached and removed from office, they're also going to probably have a felony charge in court against them as well for receiving bribes and all that. See now granted, this is a state prosecution, but see what happened to Rod Blagojevich in Illinois. He was impeached as governor of Illinois, removed from office, and then faced federal prison time until he was pardoned by President Trump. Let's talk about high crimes and misdemeanors. This is an area that is often misunderstood by students and, quite frankly, the media and most people who talk about this stuff. High crimes is an English common law phrase. Okay, it came about in the 18th century. In fact, while the Constitution was being drafted, there was a prominent member of Parliament being impeached in England. So it's not like the founders were just kind of pulling words out of the air when they were writing this Constitution. They knew what they were talking about. A high crime is a public offense of the most serious kind, where somebody is abusing their power, for example, who are acting in a corrupt manner, malfeasance. They are not acting appropriately in their office. They are abusing some aspect of their office. And ultimately, they're violating the public trust. When you're an elected official, the people are trusting you with an extraordinary amount of power and influence. And if you abuse that trust, this is the means of removal, because you don't want somebody who does that in office for 1 second longer than they need to be. A misdemeanor is some sort of action, not necessarily a crime, that reflects badly on the office or the office holder. Misdemeanors, again, is not a legal phrase. This is as much a political concept as anything else. Public drunkenness as a public official, for example, neglect of your duties, job abandonment, essentially. Again, different forms of abuse of power could be considered a misdemeanor as well. Using your offices to further the interests of your political party probably isn't impeachable, but what if you're using, for example, the IRS to go after your political enemies? Is that impeachable? And that's going to turn on the facts of each case. Ultimately, think of impeachment as a country's self-defense mechanism against an office holder who abandons their constitutional responsibilities, especially as either a judge or as a elected official. So the standards of impeachment are different for elected officials versus unelected officials, appointed figures like judges. Okay, the standards completely different. And of course, there's very good reason for that. Elected officials face a regular election by the people every 2 years, 4 years, 6 years, whatever the term is of their office. And thus, if the people don't like what they're doing, that is the preferred means of removing an elected official. You don't want to be removing people through some sort of political process. Rather, people ought to be removed by a electoral process if they're an elected figure. If you're an appointed figure, well, look, federal judges are appointed for life, right? That's a mighty long time. And Article 3 of the Constitution provides that federal judges are appointed for life and may hold office only during good behavior. So if you are acting in an inappropriate way as a judge, the basis of removal is impeachment, and it's relatively easy to remove someone, okay, under that lower standard. Because again, you're only supposed to be holding office during times of good behavior. And if you're, for example, drunk on the bench, or you are incapable of doing your job as a judge because of any number of reasons, then you're not fit to hold the office and must be removed. And impeachment is the process by which you would be removed. Now again, impeaching a president, the standards are even higher than a otherwise elected official. The reason is because the president's the leader of the executive branch. Okay, so they are co-equal to the leadership of the legislative and judicial branches under our system of checks and balances, of separation of powers, and all of that. So presidents can't be impeached, for example, for policy differences. The Republicans, for example, didn't impeach Barack Obama because they didn't like the Affordable Care Act. Okay, Donald Trump was not impeached because the Democrats didn't like his rhetoric on immigration. You have to have some basis upon which to impeach someone other than, hey, I don't like that person. That's what elections are for. Okay, and as President Obama famously said, elections have consequences. So you don't get to impeach people just because you don't agree with their policies. Now, in total, there have been 20 impeachments in American history, plus the one that got away. 15 judges, 1 senator, 1 cabinet member, and 3 presidents. Of course, the one that got away was Richard Milhous Nixon, who resigned before being impeached in the House. The articles of impeachment were being drawn up. The Senate had completed its investigation, and they were ready to go. So Nixon didn't get impeached, but Andrew Johnson, Bill Clinton, and Donald Trump most recently have been impeached. And then again, 15 judges, 1 senator, and a cabinet member. Okay, well, I hope this helps you better understand impeachment. Please, as always, email me your questions, and I'll see you soon.